Welcome to the Nordic Venture Show, your speed date with the hottest Nordic innovations and ventures. In this episode, our venture date is with Blueprint Genetics, comprehensive genetic testing services.
Okay, so today we're going to get into something pretty fascinating. We're diving into the world of genetic testing, and we've got a ton of info here about Blueprint Genetics.
Yeah.
A company that's really making waves in this whole field. We're talking everything from tests that target individual genes all the way up to these incredibly detailed genomic analyses. It's mind-blowing how much they can do now.
It really is, and that's what we're going to unpack, right? What does all this actually mean for understanding our own health and, potential risks, or even just how our bodies work?
Exactly. How does all this genetic stuff translate to real-life health and decisions you might make?
Absolutely.
So when you look at the types of tests that Blueprint Genetics offers, it's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure menu.
Right.
They've got these things called panels, which are basically targeted tests for certain areas.
Yeah, like cardiology or neurology, things like that.
Exactly. Those are just a couple examples. They've got panels for hereditary cancer, too, and tons more. And then they've got this whole other level called whole exome sequencing.
Right, and that's where they look at a much broader part of your DNA, not just specific genes.
Yeah, it's like zooming out to see the whole landscape instead of just individual trees.
Exactly, and then you've got single gene tests, which are laser focused on one particular gene, and then even variant-specific testing, which is zeroing in on tiny variations within a gene.
Wow, so it's like they have a microscope and a telescope all at the same time.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they even let you customize these panels, so it's like you can work with your doctor to really hone in on what's relevant for you.
Yeah, that's huge because it helps avoid unnecessary testing and you get answers faster.
Definitely. And the fact that they cover 14 different medical specialties with all these panels is pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah. It just shows you how much genetics plays into so many different areas of medicine now.
Like we said, cardiology, neurology, and cancer, but also stuff like metabolic disorders, ophthalmology, it just keeps going.
It's really changing the game for diagnosis and treatment across the board.
And speaking of game changers, they have this list of frequently ordered tests that kind of gives you a feel for what's in demand right now.
Okay, what are we talking about?
Well, whole exome sequencing is up there, which makes sense because it's so comprehensive.
Makes sense.
But then there are a bunch of more specific panels, too, like one for retinal dystrophy, another for aorta, and then several that focus on cardiology, like cardiomyopathy and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy panels.
Right, and those heart-related ones are really important because genetic testing can be crucial for understanding those conditions.
Exactly. And they've got a comprehensive epilepsy panel, too, plus ones for primary immunodeficiency and primary ciliary dyskinesia.
Wow, covering a lot of ground.
Oh, and familial variant testing is on there, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
If you've got a known genetic condition running in your family.
Yeah, that can be vital information for family planning and risk assessment.
Absolutely. Okay, but here's the thing. Blueprint Genetics doesn't just stop at testing.
Yeah.
They offer these other services that are really interesting.
Oh, like what?
Okay, so they have something called a reevaluation and reanalysis service.
Okay.
Which I think is so cool because it means they're basically staying on top of all the new genetic discoveries.
Right, because the field is constantly advancing, so what we know today might be different tomorrow.
Exactly. So they can actually revisit your old results if there's new information that could change the interpretation.
That's fantastic because it means you're not stuck with an outdated understanding of your genetics.
Right. And then they also have this VUS clarification service, which deals with something called variants of uncertain significance.
VUS.
Yeah. Basically, sometimes they find changes in your DNA, but they don't know for sure what they mean yet.
Like it's a mystery variant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this service helps to shed light on those findings. And they even offer clinical genetic support to help doctors navigate all this complex stuff.
So it's like they're holding your hand through the whole process, which is so important because this stuff can be overwhelming.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's say your doctor decides that a Blueprint Genetics test is right for you. What happens then?
Yeah, what's the actual process?
Well, they have this platform called Nucleus for ordering, which seems pretty straightforward.
Streamlined.
Yeah, your doctor basically orders through Nucleus, and they even provide specimen collection kits if needed.
Oh, that's good. So everything is being handled correctly from the start.
Right, and they give you all the details on what type of sample they need, how much they need, all that stuff.
Okay, makes sense.
And they're transparent about the practical side, too, like pricing, billing insurance coverage. They even have a financial assistance program.
That's great because genetic testing can be expensive, so it's good to know they're trying to make it accessible.
Totally. And on top of all that, they provide clinical reports with interpretation, not just the raw data, but explanations to help you understand what it all means.
Right. So it's not just a bunch of numbers and letters, it's actually actionable information.
Exactly. Okay, now let's get a little nerdy for a minute and talk about the technology they use.
Okay, hit me with the science.
So they're really big on explaining their analysis methods, how they interpret the data, how they classify the variants they find.
Rigorous.
Yeah, and they've got these strict quality control measures in place and even procedures for those tricky parts of the genome that are hard to sequence.
So they're really dotting their I's and crossing their plates.
Exactly. They're all about providing reliable results that you can trust, and they're global too.
Oh, yeah. They mentioned their Nucleus platform, which is accessible to clinicians worldwide.
Right, but there's a note about New York state orders having some specific requirements, and it looks like all U.S. samples are now being processed in Helsinki, Finland.
Oh, interesting. So even though they're global, there are still some regional differences to keep in mind.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
now for the real knowledge seekers out there, Blueprint Genetics has this amazing collection of educational resources. Okay, so they've got webinars on all sorts of fascinating topics. I'm talking decoding epilepsy, diagnostic odyssey cases solved by whole exome sequencing, even one on the contribution of non-coding DNA variants in inherited heart disease.
Wow, those sound really in-depth.
Right. And they have white papers too, which go into even more technical detail.
Oh, okay. For the hardcore science fans.
Plus, they've got videos like one called Rare Journeys, Mom Patient Advocate, that tells personal stories about living with genetic conditions.
Oh, wow. That sounds powerful.
Yeah. And another one called Nature's Building Blocks Decoding Disease. Plus, they have articles, posters, publications. It's like a whole genetics library.
It's amazing that they provide all these resources for free. It really shows their commitment to education.
Okay, so let's sum it all up. Blueprint Genetics offers this incredibly diverse range of genetic tests covering pretty much every medical specialty you can think of.
And they go beyond just the testing itself with services like reevaluating results and clarifying those uncertain findings. Plus, they've got that easy-to-use Nucleus platform for doctors, and they're super transparent about pricing and insurance.
Yeah, and they're all about quality and reliability with those rigorous analysis methods and quality control measures.
And let's not forget those amazing educational resources they provide.
Definitely something for everyone, whether you're a doctor, a patient, or just someone who's curious about genetics.
I think the thing that struck me the most was that list of frequently ordered tests. You know, it really highlights the areas where genetic testing is having the biggest impact right now.
Yeah, for me, it was their emphasis on reevaluation and the VUS clarification service. It just shows that they're keeping up with the ever-changing world of genetics.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Blueprint Genetics, I think it really makes you wonder about the future of personalized medicine, you know?
Totally. Like, what does it mean to have this much knowledge about our own DNA?
Right, and how will that shape healthcare in the years to come? It's pretty exciting stuff.
It really is. It makes you want to dive even deeper into this world. Well, luckily, Blueprint Genetics has all those resources we talked about. So if you're curious, go check them out. It's definitely worth exploring.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this fascinating deep dive into the world of genetic testing.
Until next time.
See you.
Thanks for listening to the Nordic Venture Show. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories of innovation from the Nordics.